My wife left me at the altar for my brother. 8 years later, she begged me to save her son. My name is Daniel Carter. For 8 years, I told myself I had buried the memory of that church. The white flowers, the violin music, the rows of guests whispering under their breath, my mother crying into a handkerchief, not because she felt sorry for me, but because she was embarrassed. And Emily, my bride, standing at the back of the church in a white dress, holding a bouquet of roses, staring at me with tears in her eyes like she was the victim. Then came my brother, Ryan. He walked in late, wearing a black suit, his tie crooked, his face pale, his eyes fixed on Emily like no one else existed. At first, I thought something terrible had happened. I thought maybe someone was hurt. Maybe there was an emergency. Maybe Ryan had come to warn us. But then, Emily dropped her bouquet. The flowers hit the floor, every head turned, and she ran. Not toward me. Toward him. Ryan opened his arms, and my bride ran into them in front of 200 people. That was the moment my life split in half. Before that day, I believed in family. After that day, I learned family could be the knife, and betrayal could wear the face you trusted most. I stood at the altar while Emily sobbed into my brother's chest. The pastor froze. The guests gasped. My father stood up from the front pew and shouted, "Ryan? What the hell are you doing?" Ryan did not even look ashamed. He held Emily tighter and said, "I'm sorry, Daniel. But she loves me." A sound came out of the crowd, half shock, half disgust. I looked at Emily, waiting for her to deny it. Waiting for her to say this was madness. Waiting for her to remember the 5 years we had spent building a life together. Instead, she looked at me with red eyes and whispered, "I can't marry you." Those 5 words did more damage than any punch ever could. I could not breathe. I remember looking down at my hands. They were shaking. The wedding ring was still in my palm. I had been ready to place it on her finger. My brother had always taken things from me. When we were kids, he took my toys. My parents said, "Let him have it, Daniel. You're the older one." When we were teenagers, he crashed my first car. My parents said, "Don't make it worse, he already feels bad." When I got a job at my uncle's construction company, Ryan showed up 2 months later and charmed everyone. When he stopped coming in on time, they blamed me for not guiding him. Ryan was the golden boy who failed upward. I was the responsible son who paid the price. But Emily was supposed to be different. She knew how much it hurt me when my parents favored Ryan. She knew how many times I had covered his debts, fixed his mistakes, lied to protect him. She used to hold my face in her hands and say, "One day, we'll build a life far away from all this." I believed her. That was my mistake. At the altar, my father stormed toward Ryan. My mother grabbed his arm and hissed, "Not here, not here." As if the location was the problem. As if my brother had not just destroyed my wedding. Emily's mother was crying. Her father would not look at me. My best friend, Michael, stepped beside me and said quietly, "Danny, let's go." But I couldn't move. I was staring at Ryan. He finally looked at me. There was guilt in his eyes. But beneath it, there was something worse. Relief. He had taken her, and now he wanted me to make it easy for him. "Daniel," he said, "I never meant for this to happen." I laughed. It was not a normal laugh. It was empty and sharp and ugly. "You never meant for this to happen?" I asked. Emily flinched. Ryan opened his mouth, but I raised my hand. "No," I said. "Don't speak." Then I looked at Emily. "How long?" She covered her mouth. I asked again, louder. "How long?" Ryan said, "Don't do this." I turned on him. "I'm not asking you." Emily trembled. Then she whispered, "Almost a year. A year." While I was choosing wedding venues, she was choosing my brother. While I was saving for our honeymoon, she was lying in his arms. While I was writing vows, she was planning betrayal. The church blurred in front of me. My father cursed. My mother started sobbing louder. Someone in the back whispered, "Oh my God." I took the wedding ring from my palm and placed it gently on the altar. Then I walked out. Not fast. Not dramatic. I did not scream. I did not break anything. I simply walked down the aisle alone, past every person who had come to watch me become a husband and instead watched me become a fool. Outside, the sky was painfully blue. Michael followed me. "Danny," he said, "give me your keys." I handed them to him without argument. He drove me away from the church while my phone exploded with calls. Emily. Ryan. Mom. Dad. Emily. Unknown numbers. Friends. Cousins. I turned the phone off. That night, I slept on Michael's couch in my wedding suit. Actually, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until morning and listened to my heart break in slow, quiet pieces. The next day, my father came to see me. He looked older than he had the day before. His shoulders were heavy. His jaw was tight. "I'm sorry, son," he said. I wanted to believe him. Then he added, "But you need to understand, this situation is complicated." And just like that, I knew. They were going to ask me to swallow it. My own father sat across from me and tried to explain that Emily and Ryan had made a terrible mistake, but that love is not always clean, and that the family needed to heal. Heal. I asked him, "What about me?" He looked away. "What about what they did to me?" He rubbed his face and said, "Your mother is devastated. Ryan is still your brother." I smiled, because if I didn't, I would have screamed. He took my fiancée at my wedding. Dad said, "I know. And you're here to ask me to make peace? I'm asking you not to destroy the family." That was the first time I realized people will often ask the wounded person to keep quiet because the truth makes everyone uncomfortable. I stood up. "Tell Mom I'm done." Dad frowned. "Done with what?" "With all of you." He looked shocked, like I was the one crossing a line. "You don't mean that." "I do." "Daniel, don't be dramatic." I laughed again, quieter this time. "My bride left me at the altar for my brother yesterday, and you're calling me dramatic." He had no answer. 3 weeks later, Ryan and Emily moved in together. 3 months later, they were engaged. 9 months later, they were married in a courthouse. My mother sent me one message. "I hope someday you can forgive them. Life is too short to hold hatred in your heart." I deleted it. Then I changed my number. I moved 2 states away with 2 suitcases, a bruised heart, and $3,000 in my bank account. For the first year, I survived. I rented a small apartment above a laundromat. The walls smelled like detergent and old rain. I worked construction during the day and drove delivery at night. Some evenings, I came home so exhausted I sat on the floor because the bed felt too far away. But pain can become fuel if you stop letting it poison you. I started taking night classes in project management, then real estate development, then finance. I had always been good at building things. My hands understood structure before my mind had words for it. I knew how foundations worked. I knew what corners people cut. I knew which contractors lied, which permits mattered, and which buildings could become profitable with the right vision. At 32, I helped a small investor renovate 3 abandoned duplexes. At 33, I became his operations manager. At 34, I bought my first property with every dollar I had saved. At 35, I sold it for enough profit to buy 2 more. By 37, I owned a small development company. By 39, I had a reputation, not famous, not flashy, but respected. People knew I was honest, hardworking, quiet, careful, the kind of man who did not promise what he could not deliver. And slowly, the man who had been humiliated at the altar became someone else. Someone stronger, someone harder to reach. I did not date for years. Not seriously. I told myself I was busy. That was partly true. But the truth was, I was afraid. When someone breaks your trust in front of everyone you love, love stops looking like warmth. It starts looking like risk. Then I met Grace. She was an attorney who specialized in nonprofit housing cases. We met during a city redevelopment meeting where she spent 20 minutes calmly destroying a greedy landlord's argument. She had kind eyes and a voice that could cut steel. After the meeting, she walked up to me and said, "You're Daniel Carter, right?" I said, "Depends who's asking." She smiled. "Someone who heard you actually fix buildings, instead of just painting over mold." That was the first time in years I laughed without bitterness. Grace did not rush me. She did not demand my secrets. She simply stayed. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into Sunday walks. Sunday walks turned into the first time I told her about Emily. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and held my hand. Then she said, "What they did was cruel. But you are not the man they tried to make you believe you were." I looked away because my eyes burned. Grace and I were not some dramatic movie romance. We were steady, peaceful, real, and maybe that was exactly what I needed. By the 8th year after the wedding disaster, my life had become something I had once thought impossible. I owned Carter Urban Development. I had a beautiful home with tall windows and quiet mornings. I had employees who trusted me. I had friends who became family. And I had Grace. We were not married yet. Not because I doubted her, but because marriage still felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. She never pushed. She only said, "When you're ready, I'll be here." I thought the past was finished. Then Emily walked back into my life. It happened on a Thursday afternoon in October. Rain tapped against the windows of my office. I was reviewing a proposal for a community housing project when my assistant, Claire, knocked on the door. "Mr. Carter," she said, "there's a woman here asking to see you." "Does she have an appointment?" "No." "Name?" Claire hesitated. That hesitation made something cold move through my chest. "She says her name is Emily Hayes." Hayes, not Carter, not Lawson. Hayes was her maiden name. My pen stopped moving. For a second, I was back in the church. I could smell roses. I could hear whispers. Claire watched my face carefully. "Should I tell her you're unavailable?" I almost said yes. The word was right there. But something in me wanted to see what 8 years had done to the woman who shattered me. "Send her in." Claire nodded and stepped away. A minute later, Emily entered my office. I did not recognize her at first, not because she had aged badly, she was still beautiful in a fragile way, but the glow she once carried was gone. Her hair was tied back carelessly, her coat was soaked from the rain, dark circles sat beneath her eyes, her hands clutched a worn leather purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She stopped just inside the door. "Daniel." Her voice cracked. I stood behind my desk. "Emily." She looked around my office, the glass walls, the framed project awards, the skyline beyond the window. Something like shame crossed her face. "You're doing well," she said softly. I did not answer. She swallowed. "I know I have no right to be here." "That's true." She flinched, but she accepted it. "I wouldn't have come. Unless it was life or death." I sat down slowly. "Whose life?" Her eyes filled with tears. "My son's." The room went still. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. "Your son." She nodded. "His name is Noah. He's 7. 7. The math struck me immediately. Not mine. Of course not mine. Ryan's son. I leaned back in my chair. "And why are you telling me this?" Emily stepped forward. "He's sick, Daniel." Her voice broke on the word. "He has a rare blood disorder. The doctors have been treating him, but it's getting worse. He needs a bone marrow transplant." I stared at her. A strange, dark part of me wondered if this was punishment. Then I hated myself for thinking it. No child deserved to suffer for the sins of adults. Emily wiped her cheek. "We tested everyone. Me. Ryan. My parents. Your parents. Cousins. Nobody is a match." At the mention of my parents, something in my jaw tightened. "You're still in contact with them?" She looked down. "They love Noah." I almost laughed. Of course they did. They had chosen Ryan and Emily, and now they had a grandson from that betrayal. A perfect little excuse to pretend the past had meaning. Emily whispered, "They said you might be tested." I looked at her sharply. "They said that?" She nodded. "So you came here because my parents sent you?" "No." She shook her head quickly. "They told me not to come." That surprised me. She continued, "Your mother said you would never help us. Your father said I had no right to ask." For once, he was correct. Emily closed her eyes as if the words physically hurt. "I know." Silence stretched between us. Rain slid down the windows. Then she did something I was not prepared for. She got down on her knees, right there, in my office. The woman who had left me at the altar for my brother knelt on the floor, shaking, crying, broken. "Daniel, please." She sobbed. "I am not asking for me. I am asking for my son. He is innocent. He is just a little boy. He likes dinosaurs and pancakes and space documentaries. He asks me if he's going to die, and I don't know what to say." My throat tightened despite myself. "Emily, get up." She shook her head. "I ruined your life. I know I did. I have lived with that every day. Hate me forever if you need to, but please, please just take the test. That's all I'm asking. If you're not a match, then at least I tried." I looked at her kneeling there. For 8 years, I had imagined this moment in different ways. Sometimes she came back begging for forgiveness. Sometimes Ryan lost everything. Sometimes my parents realized what they had done and apologized. In every version, I was calm and powerful and untouched. But reality was uglier. Because there was a child involved. A sick child. And no matter how much I hated Ryan, no matter how much Emily had destroyed me, I could not look at a dying boy and see revenge. I stood. "Get up," I said again. This time she obeyed. I walked to the window and looked out at the rain. "How is Ryan?" Emily did not answer immediately. That told me enough. "Emily," she whispered, "he left." I turned. "What?" She hugged herself. "When Noah got sick, Ryan couldn't handle it. At first, he tried. But the hospital bills, the stress, the fear. He started drinking. Then gambling again. Then he disappeared. My brother had not changed. I should have felt satisfied. I did not. How long has he been gone?" "Almost a year." "Your husband abandoned his sick child?" Tears slid down her face. "Yes." I looked at the ceiling. Of course he did. Ryan had always loved being wanted, but he had never loved responsibility. Emily said, "I'm not proud of anything. Not what I did to you. Not what I chose. Not how blind I was. But Noah is the only good thing in my life." I turned back to her. "I'll take the test." Her face collapsed with relief. "But understand something," I said. "I'm doing it for the boy. Not for you. Not for Ryan. Not for my parents. For him." She nodded quickly. "Yes. Of course. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel." I raised my hand. "Don't thank me yet." The test was simple. A cheek swab. Almost insulting really, that something so small could determine whether a child might live. Grace came with me. I had told her everything that night. She listened the same way she always did, with patience and clarity. When I finished, I expected concern, maybe jealousy, maybe fear that Emily had returned to reopen old wounds. Instead, Grace said, "You already know what kind of man you want to be. Don't let them make you smaller than that." I asked, what if I'm a match? She took my hand. Then we'll face that. That word nearly broke me. 2 weeks later, the hospital called. I was a match. Not just a possible match. A strong one. The doctor explained the next steps. More testing. Physical exams. Donation process. Risks. Recovery. I heard every word and none of them. Because all I could think was that fate had a cruel sense of humor. The man Emily left at the altar was now the man who might save her child. When Emily found out, she called me. I almost did not answer. But I did. For several seconds, she could not speak. I heard her crying on the other end. Daniel, she whispered. I don't know what to say. Say nothing. I'm sorry. I said say nothing. She went quiet. Then I softened my voice, just slightly. How is Noah? He's tired. But when I told him they found someone who might help, he smiled for the first time in days. That image stayed with me. A little boy smiling in a hospital bed because a stranger might give him a chance. Except I was not really a stranger. I was his uncle. The thought made me feel strange, heavy. I had spent 8 years pretending my family had died. Now a child with my bloodline needed me. I agreed to meet Noah, before the procedure. I told myself it was practical, that I should understand who I was helping. But the truth was, I wanted to know if I could look at him without seeing Ryan. The pediatric wing smelled like antiseptic and crayons. Emily waited outside Noah's room. She looked nervous. He knows your name is Daniel, she said. I told him you're an old friend. I looked at her. An old friend? Shame crossed her face. I didn't know what else to say. I nodded once. When I entered the room, Noah was sitting up in bed, wearing blue pajamas covered in planets. He was pale, thin, with a knit cap pulled over his head. But his eyes were bright. Ryan's eyes. That hit me harder than I expected. Then Noah smiled. Are you Daniel? I am. I'm Noah. He held out his hand like a tiny businessman. I shook it carefully. You like space? I asked. Nodding toward his pajamas. His face lit up. I know all the planets, even the dwarf planets, but some people don't count those, which is unfair. I sat beside his bed. Pluto deserves respect. Noah grinned. Exactly. And just like that, the child stopped being Ryan's son in my mind. He became Noah. A boy who liked space. A boy who argued for Pluto. A boy who had done nothing wrong. He showed me a drawing he had made of a rocket ship. The rocket had 3 windows. One for him, one for his mom, and one for whoever saves me. I had to look away for a moment. Emily stood by the door, silent, tears running down her face. Noah asked, Are you scared? I looked back at him. A little. Me too, he said. Then we'll be brave at the same time. He nodded seriously. Deal. The procedure was scheduled for 3 weeks later. During that time, my past came crawling back. My father called first. I had not heard his voice in 8 years. Daniel. I almost hung up. Dad. There was a long silence. I heard you're helping Noah. Yes. His voice shook. Thank you. I said nothing. He's a good boy. I know. Another silence. Then he said, Your mother wants to see you. No. Daniel. No. She's been crying. That stopped working on me a long time ago. He sighed. I know we failed you. The words landed like something heavy, dropped in an empty room. For 8 years, I had wanted to hear that. Now that I had, it felt smaller than expected. Yes. I said. You did. I should have stood by you. Yes. I was afraid of losing Ryan, and you lost me instead. His breath caught. I did not feel victorious. I felt tired. I'm not ready for a family reunion, I said. I'm helping Noah. That's all. I understand. No, Dad. You don't. But maybe someday you will. Then I ended the call. My mother sent a message afterward. Please let me see you. I need to apologize. I did not reply. Not because I wanted to punish her. Because I did not have enough strength to carry her guilt and my own fear at the same time. Then Ryan appeared. Not in person. At first, only through a voicemail from an unknown number. Danny, it's me. His voice was rough, older, damaged. I heard about Noah. I heard you're the match. He laughed weakly. Of course it's you. Always the hero, right? I nearly deleted it. But his voice continued. I know you hate me. You should, but he's my son. So, thank you. There was a pause. Then he said, I don't know how to come back from what I did. The voicemail ended. I listened to it once. Then I deleted it. The day of the donation, Grace drove me to the hospital. She held my hand in the waiting room. You okay? She asked. No. She nodded. That makes sense. I looked at her. I'm angry. At Emily? At all of them. At myself. At the fact that doing the right thing still hurts. Grace squeezed my hand. Doing the right thing doesn't erase the wrong. It just means the wrong didn't get to turn you into someone cruel. Before the procedure, Emily came to see me. She stood at the doorway, uncertain. Can I come in? I nodded. She stepped inside. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she said, I need to tell you something. Not because it changes anything. Not because I expect forgiveness. But because you deserve the truth. I looked at her. The truth is 8 years late. I know. She took a shaky breath. I didn't leave you because Ryan was better. I left because I was selfish and weak. Ryan made me feel exciting, dangerous. Like I was choosing passion over safety. And everyone tells young people that passion is love. Her eyes filled again. But real love was you. The boring things. The steady things. The man who showed up. The man who built. The man who protected me from storms I created myself. I stared at the wall. She continued, by the time I understood that, it was too late. I had burned everything. Why tell me this now? Because if something happens today, I don't want the last honest thing between us to be that church. I looked at her then. She seemed smaller than the girl I had loved. Not physically. Spiritually. Life had humbled her in ways revenge never could. I loved you, I said quietly. She closed her eyes. I know. No, I don't think you do. I loved you enough to build my whole future around you. A tear slipped down her cheek. And you made me feel like I was nothing. I'm sorry. I nodded slowly. I believe you. Her eyes opened. But forgiveness, I said, is not the same as access. I can let go of what you did without letting you back into my life. She nodded through tears. I understand. I hope Noah lives. I hope he grows up kind. I hope he becomes nothing like his father. Emily whispered. Me too. The donation was painful, but not unbearable. Recovery was slower than I expected. My body ached. I was tired for days. Grace stayed beside me, stubborn and gentle, making soup, handling calls, pretending not to worry. Noah's transplant happened shortly after. Then came the waiting. Days became weeks. Every update from the hospital felt like a verdict. At first, there were complications, fever, infection scares, long nights. Emily sent updates, careful not to overstep. He asked about Pluto today. He ate 2 bites of pancake. Doctors say we need to wait. I read every message. Sometimes I answered. Sometimes I just sat with the phone in my hand and remembered a small boy saying, then we'll be brave at the same time. 6 weeks later, Emily called. I knew before I answered. Something in the air changed. Daniel, she said, crying. My heart stopped. Then she laughed through the tears. It's working. I closed my eyes. The world went quiet. The doctors said his numbers are improving. They said the transplant is taking. I sat down because my legs suddenly felt weak. That's good, I whispered. He's going to have a long road. But Daniel, he has a chance. A chance. That was all we ever really asked for. I thought I would feel relief. I did. But beneath it was something deeper. A door closing. Not the door to Emily. That had closed years ago. The door to the version of myself. Still standing at the altar. Waiting for someone to choose him. Noah recovered slowly. 3 months later, I visited him again. This time, he was sitting in a wheelchair in the hospital garden, wrapped in a blanket, wearing a mask, but smiling like sunlight. Daniel. He called. I walked over and handed him a small gift. He opened it carefully. Inside was a model rocket kit. His eyes widened. No way. Yes way. Emily stood behind him, smiling softly. Noah looked up at me. When I get better, can we build it? I hesitated. Emily looked down, prepared for me to refuse. But Noah was watching me with hope. I said, yeah, when you get better, we can build it. He grinned. That promise became the beginning of something I did not expect. Not reconciliation. Not exactly. But connection. I did not become part of Emily's life. I did not attend family dinners. I did not hug my mother and pretend 8 years had not happened. I did not welcome Ryan back when he finally stumbled into rehab after hearing Noah was improving. But I saw Noah. Every few weeks at first, then once a month. We built the rocket. Then a telescope. Then a ridiculous solar system mobile that Grace said looked like a science project attacked by glitter. Noah loved Grace immediately. She's smarter than you, he told me once. I said, most people are. Grace laughed so hard she nearly dropped Saturn. One evening, after Noah was well enough to visit my home for the first time, he stood in my backyard looking through the telescope. Daniel? He asked. Yeah? Mom told me you're my uncle. I froze. Emily stood near the porch, pale. Grace looked at me gently, letting me choose. I walked over and stood beside Noah. She did? He nodded. Is it true? Yes. He looked through the telescope again. Why didn't I know before? That question was bigger than him. I knelt beside him. Because adults made mistakes. Big ones. And sometimes when adults make mistakes, kids get stuck with confusing stories. He thought about that. Were you mad? Yes. At me? I felt something crack open in my chest. Never at you. He looked at me then. Good. Good. I repeated. Then he hugged me. Small arms around my neck. No drama, no speech, no music. Just a child forgiving confusion he had not caused. Later that night, Emily found me near the driveway. Noah wants to know if he can call you Uncle Daniel. I looked toward the house, where Noah was laughing at something Grace said. He can call me whatever he wants. Emily nodded. Thank you. I looked at her. This time, the words did not make me angry. 8 years ago, if someone had told me I would save Emily's son, speak to my parents again, and let a child call me uncle, I would have thought they were insane. But life does not always heal by returning what was stolen. Sometimes it heals by giving you something you never expected. A year after the transplant, Noah was officially in remission. Emily invited me to a small celebration. I almost refused. Then Grace said, "You don't have to go for them. You can go for him." So I went. My parents were there. My mother cried when she saw me. But she did not run to me. Maybe she had finally learned that her emotions were not my responsibility. My father approached slowly. "Daniel," he said. "Dad." He looked at Grace, then back at me. "I'm glad you came." I nodded. My mother stepped forward. "I am sorry," she said. No excuses, no speeches, no asking for forgiveness. Just 4 words. I studied her face. For years, I imagined rejecting her apology. But in that moment, I realized forgiveness was not a gift I gave them. It was a key I had been carrying in my own locked fist. "I hear you," I said. It was not full forgiveness, but it was a beginning. Ryan was there too. He stood apart from everyone, thinner than I remembered, sober but haunted. When he saw me, shame pulled his face downward. I could have ignored him. Part of me wanted to. Instead, I walked over. He swallowed. "Danny." "Ryan." His eyes watered. "I don't deserve to speak to you." "No," I said. "You don't." He nodded. "I'm sorry." I waited. He continued, voice breaking. "For Emily. For the wedding. For Mom and Dad. For every time I took what was yours because I hated that you were better than me." There it was. The truth beneath everything. Ryan had not stolen Emily because he loved her more. He stole her because he could not stand that I had something good. "I spent years wanting you to suffer," I said. He looked down. "And then you did." His shoulders shook. "But it didn't fix anything." I continued. "It didn't give me back what you took. It didn't make me whole." Ryan whispered. "Can you ever forgive me?" I looked across the yard at Noah, who was wearing a paper astronaut helmet and chasing bubbles. "I don't know," I said. "Honestly. But I'm done letting you be the center of my pain." Ryan covered his face. That was the last heavy conversation we had for a long time. The celebration was simple. Cake. Balloons. Too many adults crying when Noah blew out candles even though it was not his birthday. He called it his second chance party. When it was time to make a wish, he closed his eyes dramatically. Then he opened one eye and said, "Can I say it out loud?" Emily laughed. "That's not how wishes work." "I don't care." Everyone smiled. Noah looked at me. "I wish Uncle Daniel stays in my life forever." The yard went silent. I could not speak. Grace reached for my hand. I looked at Noah and managed to say, "That one's easy." He grinned and blew out the candle. 6 months later, I asked Grace to marry me. Not in a church. I wasn't ready for that. I asked her on the rooftop of our first completed affordable housing project, under a sky full of stars, with a city below us that looked almost peaceful. I told her, "I thought love was standing at an altar and hoping someone chose me. But you taught me love is someone standing beside me after the worst parts are already known." Grace cried. Then she said yes. At our wedding, Noah was the ring bearer. He took his job extremely seriously. Before walking down the aisle, he looked up at me and whispered, "Don't worry. I won't run away with the bride." I nearly choked. Grace laughed so hard she had to fix her makeup. My parents attended quietly. Emily came only for Noah's part, then left before the reception. That was her choice, and I respected it. Ryan did not come. He sent a letter. I read it later. It said he was still working recovery. Still trying to become the kind of father Noah deserved. Still sorry. Still ashamed. At the end he wrote, "You saved my son when I had no right to ask anything from you. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the mercy you showed him." I folded the letter and put it away. Not because everything was healed. Because not every wound needs to be reopened to prove it exists. Years passed. Noah grew stronger. He became obsessed with robotics, then astronomy, then girls, which Emily said was more terrifying than cancer. He visited often. Sometimes Ryan came too, sober and quiet, trying. He and I were not close. Maybe we never would be. But we learned to exist in the same room without the past, swallowing all the oxygen. My mother became gentler. My father became honest. Emily never remarried. Once, years later, she and I stood together at Noah's middle school science fair. His project was about bone marrow donation. He had made a poster titled, "How One Person Can Save Another." When Noah walked away to talk to judges, Emily looked at me. I used to think the worst day of your life was the day I left you, she said. I watched Noah explain stem cells to a confused teacher. It was. She nodded. But maybe, she said softly. The worst thing I did led to the best thing you ever did. I turned to her. No, Emily. She looked startled. What you did was still wrong. Noah living does not make the betrayal meaningful. It just means something good survived after it. Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. You're right. I looked back at Noah. He's the good thing. Not the betrayal. That was the difference. For years, people tried to wrap my pain in pretty paper. They said everything happened for a reason. They said betrayal made me stronger. They said family was family. But I learned something else. Pain does not need to be justified to be survived. Betrayal does not become holy because you heal from it. And forgiveness does not mean handing the knife back to the person who stabbed you. 8 years after Emily left me at the altar, she came back begging me to save her son. I could have said no. Many people would have understood. Maybe they even would have applauded. But I said yes. Not because she deserved it. Not because Ryan deserved it. Not because my parents deserved peace. I said yes because a 7-year-old boy with planet pajamas and tired eyes deserved a chance to grow up. And in saving him, I did not erase what happened to me. I proved it had not destroyed me. There is a difference. The last time I visited the old church was almost 20 years after that ruined wedding. Grace was with me. We were driving through town for a charity event, and I asked her to stop. The church looked smaller than I remembered. The steps were the same. The doors were the same. For a moment, I saw myself there again. Younger. Broken. Humiliated. A man holding a ring meant for a woman who had already chosen someone else. Grace stood beside me. Are you okay? She asked. I nodded. I think so. I walked up the steps, and stood where I had once walked out alone. Back then, I thought my life had ended. But it had only been redirected. Brutally. Unfairly. Painfully. But redirected. I looked at Grace, then at my wedding band, then at the sky. And for the first time, the memory of that day did not feel like a wound. It felt like a scar. Still there. Still real. But closed. I took Grace's hand, and walked back to the car. I did not look back. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is not revenge at all. Sometimes it is building a life so full, so honest, and so deeply your own that the people who betrayed you become only a chapter. Not the ending. My name is Daniel Carter. My wife left me at the altar for my brother. 8 years later, she begged me to save her son. And I did. Not because I forgot. Not because it stopped hurting. But because I refused to let their betrayal decide the kind of man I would become. In the end, I did not just save Noah. I saved the last good part of myself. And that was the life I chose to keep.